Okay, so this file is working on AlgebraTiles. I'll show you all the steps I go through. I've just brought this in. It actually was designed initially in Active Studio, but it'll work fine in Inspire. A couple of things that happen when I move over to Inspire, though. One thing is that I don't like where this menu is here on the side. So, I mean, I could make it smaller. That's one thing I could do, is just by rolling it up. My favorite, though, is to go here and just switch to where you're docking it and put it somewhere else. I like it at the bottom. It seems easier to reach and doesn't get in the way of things. These blue bars on the side annoy me, but maybe you like them. So I'm going to switch over to fit to width, and now it fits the full screen. So this is my opening screen for Algebra Unit, and I just let them know that to help with algebras or integers in algebra, I show them the first two tiles. The red one's going to be +1, and the blue one's going to be -1. Now, I'll mention right now, I put a little R and B in those corners there. That helps when I print them out so they can see which ones are red and blue. I ran into that, printed all the notes out, and they found out, oh, I can't tell which ones are red and blue. But if you got those little R and B in there, then they know which ones are red and blue on printouts. Now, you notice, what I want you to notice here is this tile right here moves freely. So that's no problem because it's been pulled out of this one. This one's different. If I go up to this one and just pull out of it, you see I can pull out as many of these as I want, and that's really convenient on the screens that follow because I can bring out as many of these +1s as I need to. Now, those are all in the way now, so I'm just going to get them out of here. I went over them all, and I'm going to drag them all in the trash and get them out of the way. But the important thing is, so people wonder, you know, how do you do that? And so once you've got an object that you like, you can just right-click on it and click right on drag a copy, and now that one becomes can do that as well. And you can do it to any shape you want, and it's real convenient for coming up with multiple copies of things. I've seen students once they get used to it, they build one and then they'll, okay, that's grabbing too many things, so I'll grab them individually and get rid of them here. But so there's drag a copy in a nutshell. Just makes it so you can have an infinite pile of them right away. The next thing I want to show you is over here on the side here, this page browser. It's a lot nicer in Active Inspire than it is in Active Studio. I can see multiple pages at a time, but I can also turn the zoom up a little bit here, and I can see all sorts of all the pages that are in the file. It allows me to organize pages, move them around, jump to one I want to see, but I'll be using that a few times when I get in here. You can pin it down so that now it won't come off here. You notice the blue things come back here when I do that, so that it is always there, or I leave it unpinned, and then I can go over there whenever I want, and it'll just spin itself out. Again, this annoys me sometimes, so I just fit it to height and then fit it to width, and then it's full size again. But maybe those blue bars don't bother you. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next page in this, and you'll see some of the stuff I actually did in my class. My first question I asked was, how would you represent +4? And we just dragged out 4 red algebra tiles. How would you represent -7? And there's 7 blue algebra tiles. And the kids, somebody just comes up and drags them out. Now, how would you represent 0? Well, there was different people that came out with different zeros. So here's a 0. Oops, that jumped out here, so I just got to click off it. But you get a 0 there, and then we agreed as a class that this meant 0, and that this meant 0. All these, and we were talking about 0 pairs, and you'll see how I deal with that in a few minutes. Something you can do on Active Inspire that you can't do when you're doing this on an overhead. And so, as time goes by, you see I started to use these, and these are supposed to be zeros. When we're talking about it, I didn't. This isn't really a circle. This is, oh, that's a 0. Oh, that's a 0, and that's a visual you can't get on just doing it on the overhead screen. So now we saw so the question was how to represent +3 in 2 different ways. Well, obviously this one comes up, but here's another +3 that comes up with this as a 0, so they can see +3 and then a 0 here. Okay, so that's one big advantage of doing AlgebraTiles on the Inspire. I mean, the drag a copy being the other one. So then we started doing 5 plus -2, and then this came naturally. Like, it wasn't even a big speech I had to do. It was just like, oh, okay, so there's a 0, there's a 0. 5 plus -2 is +3. -3 plus -2, that's one of the easier ones to do with AlgebraTiles. -4 plus 2 fell out pretty easily. 5 subtract +3. Now we did something different here. It was actually 5 minus 3. See that little plus sign we added later, and I was talking about, well, okay, 5, you're actually subtracting +3, and then we did this for subtracting. We crossed them out. Much better visual than on overhead, where you take them away and move them out of the way, because that kind of, it loses what's happened. This was 5, and I took away +3, and this is a pretty easy question that they know the answer to, but this really shows how to do it with AlgebraTiles. 5 minus -2, with all the work we had done on before this, the visual came out nicely. And continue on here. There's lots of different questions I had asked. Okay, now in the file I've included here, I left one blank here. How would you represent? So there's a very good chance you don't want all these ones that with my kids work on them. I use them as examples, but then I left a blank one for you so that you could just delete all of those ones and then duplicate this as many times as you want. That's the big advantage of duplications. I put 2 there, but if you want to duplicate it, then you're all ready for go. Like, you don't know how many questions you're going to ask in class? No problem. You just go down here and you right click on it, on a file, and go down to duplicate, and now I've got 3 of them. And I can go duplicate again, and now I got 4 of them. And you can even highlight a bunch of them and hit duplicate, and then I've got like 8 of them. So it just keeps going like that. And now let me zoom out so you can see what I've accomplished here is in that part of the file, I've got that duplicated a bunch of times and ready to go for as many screens as I want to come up with those all ready to go. Okay, so then after you're done all that with working with integers, then I introduce the concept of x, and you can do it any way you want, but again, these are drag copies, and the same type of thing goes on. You can drag out the algebra tiles very nicely and illustrate things very well. And you see, again, I'm still using these zeros. I know they're very oblong, but the kids really got it, you know, that that's 0, that's 0. And so all sorts of questions in here. This is a review that we did of the positive and negatives. And I was going back all the time and reviewing. Like when they came in the next day, we go, oh, remember what we did way back here? And you could go right back to the very first day and remind them, or if somebody's away, or you got all those options. You got a record of the whole lesson. And again, I included blank copies of one that just has positive ones and positive x's and negative ones and negative x's, okay? And then somewhere along the way, I had my little speech about what x squared looks like, and these rotate very nicely, and away you go. And then after that, the templates all had x squared, so now I was doing things with x squareds, and they could drag the x squareds out. So there's the drag one, and there's the ones they dragged out. Maybe this needs a dividing line, you know, maybe something like that, or maybe these need to be a little smaller. But it worked pretty well for me. So now you see there's all sorts of these x squared type questions, and we did all sorts of combinations, and we just kept going. They had their own algebra tiles in front of them, but meanwhile we were doing all sorts of stuff. So you can see basically how I did it. Again, the 0 concept is there. And then finally you'll see that I've included, okay, they started like in pink there for a while, and we were talking about multiplying and distributing, you know, so we did a lot of work there. You can see some of it, it's in student writing. So let me just jump ahead on here and see there's the blank one I've included. So you might want to delete all the ones I put in there, or clear annotations if you want. That's another option, is to clean those up. So if you got a page in there like this one that's got a whole bunch of my student work in there, you can hit clear annotations, this button right here, and it gets rid of all that stuff. And then I can go, oh, I've jumped ahead there, so let me go back to that one. Let me go back to another one here. Okay, so clear annotations, gone. And then I want all these algebra tiles here. I just drag across them, whoop, boom. There's a blank one. Okay, so you can do that if you want to them, but I included blank ones. Now you'll notice at the end here, then I started into equation solving, but you know, this is a pretty good version of it. But if you really want to see the really good version of this, you can check out the equation solving video, because this has been really souped up in there. But you can see that it leads naturally into that. Okay, thanks a lot.